Speaker, I was elected in 2010, just 5.5 short years ago. One of the members in that freshman class with me was Mo Brooks from northern Alabama. He's down here on the floor tonight. When I got ready to introduce the FairTax in that Congress, Mo was one of the first folks out of the box to say, Rob, we can make a difference. We can make a difference for the country. We can make a difference for individual families. Put me down as a co-sponsor of the FairTax, and I'd be honored to yield to the gentleman from Alabama tonight.
Well, thank you for the opportunity to stand with you here tonight as we discuss the FairTax. Quite frankly, I wish my eloquence was that of yours, but certainly my passion is for the FairTax, with all the economic benefits that it would yield to the American people, the job creation it would yield, and the simplification of the headaches that occur every March and April as American people, including job creators, have to try to figure out how much taxes they have to pay. In that vein, I have some prepared remarks, but I'm available for any colloquy that you may want to have afterwards. Here are my prepared remarks. Mr. Speaker, America's tax code is so complex as to border on impossible for any one person to understand. According to the National Taxpayers Union, in 2016, American taxpayers suffered an economic loss of $234 billion from the 1.9 billion hours of time spent trying to figure out and pay their taxes. Making matters worse, from 1986, when President Reagan signed the Tax Reform Act into law, to today, the tax code has grown from 30,000 to 70,000 pages, more than doubling in size. Further, the corporate tax rate has skyrocketed to 39.1%, easily claiming the highest rate in the industrialized world. I cannot emphasize enough the detrimental impact America's complicated tax code has on our economy and the burden it creates for taxpayers and job creators alike. As such, I strongly support Representative Rob Woodall's Fair Tax Act to abolish the federal income tax, employment tax, and estate and gift tax, and replace them with a national sales tax and prebate that eliminates the effect of sales taxes on low-income families. Businesses and families know how to best spend their hard-earned money. We need a system that puts power back into the hands of the taxpayer, not government bureaucrats. The Fair Tax proposal makes this possible. In particular, it eliminates the income tax and stops the federal government snooping into American citizens' incomes, savings, and bank accounts while still producing the revenue needed to fund the federal government. The Fair Tax is simpler, thereby saving taxpayers billions of hours and hundreds of billions of dollars in trying to determine tax liability. In addition, the Fair Tax dramatically stimulates America's economy by eliminating costly income tax and compliance costs for America's employers, thus cutting the cost of producing American goods and services by roughly 15 to 20%, a huge competitive advantage in an increasingly tough international marketplace. This competitive advantage for American job creators means more jobs and higher incomes for American workers. Mr. Speaker, I urge you to bring the Fair Tax legislation to the House floor for a vote to simplify the tax code, return American individual freedom, and grow the economy. Similarly, Mr. Speaker, I encourage the members of the House of Representatives to support this plain, common-sense way of collecting taxes, stimulating the economy, and getting the federal government more so out of our own personal lives. Mr. Speaker, I yield back the remainder of my time, but to the extent Congressman Woodall has more that he wants to discuss, I'm available.
I appreciate the gentleman's comments. You had me at more jobs and higher wages for American workers. You had me there, but one of the things we don't ever talk about is the snooping that you described. Now, snooping's a powerful word, but as you were talking about that, it dawned on me that the federal government knows more about my finances than any member of my family. I mean, think about that. The federal government knows more about me and my finances than I am willing to tell any member of my family. And I don't, when I think about freedom in this country, when I think about what the government needs to do to keep us safe, to keep the economy growing, I don't think about that degree of invasiveness as being necessary today.
Well, it's not just the snooping. It is also the coercion, where the federal government Washington uses the tax code to compel people to engage in conduct that they otherwise would not engage in, or to not engage in conduct that under the normal circumstances were they free to do so without potential retaliation by the IRS, they would engage in. And we've got some issues, by way of example, where the Internal Revenue Service has been used to try to achieve political gains, where the Internal Revenue Service has been used to punish people because they have chosen to exercise their freedom of speech rights or their religious rights, or because they chose to associate with some people rather than other people, all rights guaranteed in the United States Constitution and the Bill of Rights. And the power that we have given the federal government and the Internal Revenue Service through the income tax code can all be taken away from the federal government by going to the FairTax. The reasons to support the FairTax so greatly outnumber any potential harms that detractors may describe, that again, I urge the Speaker of the House to allow this legislation to come up for a House floor vote so that we can support it, so that we can pass it through the House of Representatives. But should it fail, so that the American people will know who is on record in support of liberating the American people from the Internal Revenue Service and who wants to keep the Internal Revenue Service as our masters with our being in bondage to their whims. So there are lots of advantages, very few disadvantages, and again, I want to thank you and the people of the great state of Georgia who have sent you here so that you can advocate on their behalf and advocate for a fair tax that just makes sense.
Well, I have appreciated your friendship and your leadership since you and I arrived here together just 2 terms ago. And while you were speaking, I put up a poster that has a postmark that reads April 15th. You were talking about what it means to make March and April less intimidating, less frightening. You talked about coercion and intimidation. I would wager there is not a single American citizen age 16 or older, anyone who has ever held a job and had a paycheck, that when I put up a postmark of April 15th, they don't know exactly what that means. That means that's the day the tax man is going to come calling, and I'm going to do the very best I can to get it right. But if I don't, because it's too complex, I just can't figure it all out, the federal government and criminal enforcement is going to come calling. It is a frightening day for folks to do a civic responsibility, and that's to help keep the government open. I thank the gentleman for his leadership.